Here we go. Stromquist here. Welcome to episode 263 of ControlTalk, now your smart buildings videocast and podcast for the week ending April 22nd, 2018. If I sound excited, it's because I am. And we got two great guests this week. Well, I'm sorry, we got one great guest. We got one great co-host. So without further ado, let me introduce your co-host and mine, the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only. Say it with me, Therese. Control guy from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Kenny Smyers.
Oh, wow. I'll tell you what, when Eric does that, Therese, it has the impact and effect of like my head gets blown up like a balloon, you know. Yeah. Man, with the legend. Every time I hear that, I get like, you know.
But hang on, Kenny, I'm not done yet. So if you've ever watched Austin Powers, Dr. Evil had a mini-me, and this week we had a very special guest. And I'm not saying she's Kenny Smyers' mini-me, but she's is at least as smart as Kenny Smyers, is not smarter than both of us put together. Kenny, introduce Therese Sullivan.
Well, I'd love to, Eric. Therese Sullivan is the editor of buildingcontext.me, and Therese has really taken a firm foothold on expertise from a different perspective, and that's the Silicon Valley. Therese has an incredible background in many disciplines, and then is able to come from a perspective that we don't see because we're inside the industry. Therese is outside the industry and has a special perspective. So, Therese, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show, Therese.
Thank you, and happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
Well, you're great, and so sort of echoing what Kenny said, as a teacher of mine once said, we're not sure who discovered water, but we're pretty sure it wasn't a fish because a fish was in the water and couldn't see it. So, Therese, your perspective is invaluable. The industry is lucky to have you here, and we appreciate you taking some time to hang out with us. So rather than just doing a separate interview with you, we thought we'd just have you be part of the show today. So you'll be with us from the beginning to the end. So look at Kenny and say, Kenny, what do we have up first?
Kenny, what do we have up first?
Well done. I'll tell you, natural. Well, Therese, as you know, we have a truncated show this week in terms of the number of posts because we traveled. We were down in New Orleans at the Niagara Summit 2018 and had an extraordinary experience of both the networking. We saw all the great people in the industry. We saw a tremendous amount of technology being reinforced and then being presented. So we have three Niagara Summit posts and one EasyIO post. We'll start with the EasyIO post to get that one on the board first and then transition into the Niagara Summit. So first up is we have the future will be open, connected, and always on. EasyIO is ready for the future. Are you? So Johan Shakarad was very, very proud of this video. It's like the European state of the art. It's really cool. I think it's his voice. He hasn't answered me yet. I sent him an email. But basically, EasyIO has really posted itself from kind of a startup, entity to almost a global brand. That's just, they are a global brand. In fact, when we had the worldwide meeting for EasyIO, it's probably the most attended from all the different countries around the world. But it's very exciting. What they're doing is they're reiterating that there's 70% of the market, 80% of the market, the buildings out there are underserviced, and the technology used to be so expensive and difficult with the barriers and whatever. EasyIO has done everything it could to lower the costs, lower the barriers of entry, and let's get the world connected because the future, we're at the tip of the iceberg as far as they can tell.
So I just want a couple of comments. EasyIO was there in force. Kenny and I have known Mike Marston and Lem from EasyIO since the very, very beginning. So it's thrilling for me to see how they are progressing. They've added two new people to the team, Brian Klein, and Kenny, I'll let you comment on Brian in a minute. And also Gina Elliott, one of my absolute favorite people in the industry. So I guess I'll just ask you, both you guys, with Gina and Brian on board, what do you think the ramifications are there?
Go ahead, Therese.
Yeah, I just think, well, Gina brings all that experience from first Schneider Electric, but before that, I know she has I really identify with her. She has a really strong communications background, people background. I think it's such a strong person to bring on the team, both, particularly that she understands how a global company works. She's a great communicator. She knows our industry really well. It was like having, a sparkle in the room when you looked across the room and you saw Gina there at that Niagara event. That she's such a part of the community, and I think she's gonna I think she's in charge of North America, sales for North America. Yep. Which they really have to develop, and I can't imagine them having a better person in that role.
Ditto. I agree. Yeah. Well, like you said, there's so much to the industry to learn at any given time, but sometimes the people that are most effective are the ones that tell the story in messaging and marketing. And Gina's a pro at that. So when Mike and EZIO decided to bring her on board, they brought an accomplished professional that's going to have very little startup time, and she knows the ropes, so to speak. She knows the people in the industry and the connections, so that she's going to bring right on board. Wouldn't you agree, Eric?
No, I would totally agree. And I think, we talk a lot, guys, about the need to have, multiple perspectives and multiple backgrounds. And Gina is just a fascinating individual. She actually went to school, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school here. This is probably common knowledge if you research it. She went to school to be a warden, actually. She was in prisons and stuff like that. And then from there, she went on to do other things. She's brilliant. She's been with Schneider Electric. Little known fact about Gina, guys, is she owns her own publishing company. She publishes books. She told me at the summit that two of her writers won awards, which I think is really, really cool.
Very exciting.
Yeah. And Therese, I think you'll get a big kick out of this. One of the stories was a doctor who wrote a book about a gunfighter in the Wild West who had Tourette syndrome. And apparently, if you have Tourette syndrome, your reflexes are a lot faster. So I thought that was fascinating.
That's interesting. She had, before Schneider, she had a real estate background too. So she understands that side of it, running buildings, CMMS, and I think that's going to be more and more important, is people that can straddle those worlds. Agreed. That, of course, IBCon brings together.
Yeah, it does for sure. And real quick, what about Brian Klein, Kenny? What's your take on him? Well,
Brian is, first of all, he's a really nice guy. He's easy to get along with, but he's a very serious, Niagara integrator. He has a company called BC Technical Services LLC, and we used his services on several times. And he's a certified Niagara trainer, so he brings the real thing to bear. And one of his interesting concepts was he thought that that we should integrate the Niagara training segment with the EZIO certification training segment. So he's got some really exciting ideas on how to consolidate and maximize the expense that the people pay, because it requires a substantial investment to get trained. And so when you have that services, you can come away with 2 certificates of training and attendance for one. It'll be interesting to see how Brian pulls it up, but he's a really smart guy. So he's gone to a couple of projects where things needed sorted out at a very high level to get networks back online and whatever, and to integrate some some of the challenging integrations where you're bringing different protocols together. And it sounds easy, but it still requires somebody that really has an astute understanding of how you do it. And that Brian's one of those guys. So he's going to be a big technical support person for EZIO and training. So we're going to see a lot of events where Brian Klein will be he'll be putting it on.
So I think the big takeaway for me with EZIO, Therese and Ken, and see if you guys agree with it, is I think they've, now the fact they've always had great tech support, I think they've really ramped up their marketing with Gina, but it seems like now they've localized in the North American market. They're super, super strong everywhere else in the world, and I think they're going to be even stronger here.
Agreed. In North America, because when we talk, it's so easy to just, say things like global or international and all those other, references to points where, but we had a meeting recently where we actually had people participating in the EasyIO program. There's going to be another post next week from EasyIO with a gentleman who put up an alarm DB program. A open community wrote a really nice little alarm sequencing for EasyIO FG controllers that he gave to the community. And so we're just seeing this kind of an ecosystem develop. And again, when you get the real professionals, so you enrich your training deployment, you got somebody who can really do training and certify. You got a accomplished marketing person that really understands the industry. You can write about it and talk about it. So control the messaging and get people excited about it. You got
marketing and sales.
Yeah. So you got some serious firepower,
Well, you do, and of course, the other thing, Kenny and Therese, I don't think you've been there yet, but get your Audrey Hepburn dress on because their global conference is going to be in Rome this year, and Kenny and I've had the experience of going to these global conferences, and EasyIO does know how to do a conference. We went to the Manchester United game last year. It's just incredible what they do. You learn a lot, but the thing that's most exciting to me, Ken and Therese, is that you meet integrators from all around the world, and it's going to be great. That's not going to be this year. It's going to be next year. So get your passports in order, get your shots, because we're going to Rome.
All right, let's do it.
What do we have up? Oh, Therese, look at Kenny and say, what do we have up next, Kenny?
What do we have up next, Kenny?
All right, well, I'll tell you, Therese, we're going to go ahead and start off with the Niagara Summit. Connecting the World begins with a festive reception in Champion Square. And Eric and I were at this square at the last summit, and it was a different environment. First of all, it was cold, and there was 1,000 people there, but they were seeking shelter inside the really nice reception inside of the Champion Square facility. But outside, they still had a tremendous stage. We got to see some guitar worker that Eric's going to talk about explicitly because they have Jimi Hendrix as a common denominator growing up and to this point. But it was really interesting because we saw the Niagara community come from 1,000 points, from different parts of the world assemble. We saw some great friends. Anytime I ever seen an assembly of that caliber of people, I always thank God that I don't have to make that payroll, because imagine how extraordinary each and every one of these individuals. Everyone is, involved heavily in the Niagara. They're selling it, programming, engineering it, whatever. But that was the true collection from around the world.
Not to mention customers. The one thing about the outside part of that being a little chilly is I was near one of the heaters, and the guy next to me was facilities manager over Dallas Airport.
Oh, cool.
So I found myself talking to a lot of customers when I was there checking out.
Nice. And what Therese, when you're talking to the customers, what are they saying about Niagara?
A lot of them that were there, like this gentleman, is they're as steeped in this as we are. He was new to Niagara. He'd been let's call him a captured entity. I don't know which one of the big brands had him captured, but he was looking for a way to go open protocol. He was relatively new to Niagara and everything it could bring, and he was pretty excited about it. And I would watch him day by day, and he was there every day. He was there in a lot of sessions. He was talking to everybody.
Oh.
So I'm sure when he walked away, he was very Niagara informed.
Very good. What do you think, Eric, of the reception? Because the first day had some other things we'll talk about.
Well, the reception I thought was outstanding. It was cold and not for the faint of heart, but then I think we realized that actually the real party was actually inside where it was nice and warm.
And we missed the parade over there too. I when I look at the pictures, there was a whole mummers band kind of thing leading the big crowd, and that's when that whole big crowd that we weren't seeing went right into the warm space.
I think you're right, Teresa, and I think at this moment we should probably just all take our hats off, except for me because I don't have any hair, and congratulate Jenny Graves because she, again, this is her second year put together a spectacular conference with a parade. And, right in front of, imagine if you can go to Control Tent and see it, you got the Superdome behind you, you got this huge pavilion, you got a rock and roll band up on stage that's playing, and then out of the blue, they introduce a couple of Niagara employees, Logan and Gareth, and they get up and play. And this Gareth guy thought it was literally, he says Jimi Hendrix could have been any rock and roll star. At one point I looked over to Kenny and said, Kenny, isn't Niagara clever? They actually hired a professional musician
So they pay him at the event.
musician for
There
the
we go.
weekend, so they could legitimately say they had a rock and roll star. But this guy is not. He's been working for him a long time, Kenny. I mean, he's the guy that's the architect of the platform now.
Well, I'll tell you what, Eric. I get, it's kind of funny because when we do these things, every once in a while, I get a little bit sloppy on the names, because I can't remember everybody's name, and I write down like I made a boo boo here in our pre warm up where I said somebody's name wrong. So whenever I get a chance, I get a card or a copy. Well, this time when I had a chance, I got a signature. I got an autographed signature from.
Smart move.
Yeah, so that if he ever does hit the big time, I've already got myself. I'm already
And
on
he's
board.
Gareth? I never did get his name. Was that Gareth?
It's Garrett
Yes.
Johnson, and here was the actual guitar. Can you guys see that? Okay.
Yeah, and
There's my autograph. So
There-
when he
there
gets
you
when
go.
he hits the big time, Ken's got his autograph.
So, and the guitar, just is made by an ex-Johnson Controls employee by the name of Dimitri Papadopoulos.
Wow, I didn't know that.
It was, yeah, because I knew Dimitri when we covered the Johnson conferences, and he
Sure
told me he
did.
made custom guitars. And of course, Gareth knew him. Gareth.
Yeah.
G knew him. So that was good. And but the fact is, so I think for all the people who are trying to attract to the industry, if you're thinking about being a rock and roll star or being an architect of a platform for smart building controls, Garth he's cooler than anybody you'll ever meet. So choose us. Don't choose rock and roll. Right, Therese?
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think really in trying to understand this industry, say a few years ago, the shape of that box, the shape of what a Jace box is something that pulls the industry together. And even Jim Bland used it in his keynote of that box is like a wand. And to have that was in one other echo of that one, the guitar was in the shape of the Jace box. That's significant and fun. I mean, it made everybody smile and laugh. And we all know that those come in different colors for all the different brands. And to see it up there in the Tritium brand, it was it was a real good stage setter, I think.
Very well said. And so great food, great music.
Well, Eric, I just wanted to turn around a little bit to say how much more business was there too, because for like Therese mentioned, there were different people there, like a customer perspective, because there was a lot of customers, Tritium customers, Niagara customers, but they also did the developer boot camp. I mean, so that's why we saw some of the really sharp knives in the drawer there early, because they had the developers boot camp, developers view on entities. They had the Niagara UI mobile boot camp, design lab, and then the developer showcase. So there was a subset of people there already, like heavily immersed in the Niagara meeting before, and the reception came later on that evening. So, I mean, you talk about putting the package together, compressed. We're decompressing now, but my goodness, there was a lot of pre-work. So like you said,
a lot of brain power there.
Jenny Graves threw a heck of a show together, and
I hope she's getting a little bit of a rest, because she worked her tail off. So, Therese, I want to cycle back to you for a minute, because you come from Silicon Valley, among other places, and we're talking about the Jace, we're talking about Niagara. I mean, what would that compare to like Silicon Valley? Is that like DOS or Windows, or what analogy would you use, or how do you see it sort of analogy? I'm going to stump Kenny with a
analogous.
So how is the Niagara?
So Niagara, I mean, you guys would have to talk this through with me, but I think Niagara is the MS-DOS.
It's Windows, yeah.
And
Right.
as the Windows is Windows, what became Windows. And the Jace box is the PC. And I think it's very interesting when you put your mind back into the Macintosh versus the PC era, and everybody was dinging Apple as having been ahead with the Macintosh, because it had the Windows interface, the more friendly user interface before the PC did, and then it seemed to lose brand share, and everybody dinged them because it was closed, because there was they wanted to do soup to nuts, the chip to the box to so it's very closed. And then you had the PC, which was exploding because people, it was brand, and I feel like we're there. Like all of a sudden, all the enterprises wanted to put a PC on every desk, so they couldn't afford what Apple wanted to charge them for their closed system. And IBM was selling their IBM PCs, and then you had all these clones. You had the whole world all of a sudden making the box and paying Microsoft, and that's why Microsoft with Windows turned to choke point rather than, and you had the Intel, you weren't calling it which hardware manufacturer, you were calling it Wintel, Windows plus Intel, the chip. And I think we're a little bit at that sort of moment where it's just going to be such a big word, proliferation.
Proliferation. You got it.
Proliferation.
Boom.
No, here we're going to have one of Kenny's with yours, an aquifer proliferation.
An aquifer, yeah, they're going to be all over the place, just like that moment. But is the closed system going to be as easy to spread as the open system? Well, we know from that echo that the open system, the Wintel thing, spread a lot faster. And that's why I think, the whole Sedona thing, the EasyIO thing, the size of this already, the number of people that have seen the Jace are going to continue to build on the Jace. And that's something we have to get to, all the innovation that the Niagara team, Kevin Smith, have brought to the Niagara Jace box. So that's evolving really fast. And then alongside it, you have what's going on with Sedona and et cetera. So I feel like maybe it's different, of course, but that's the analogy I give it.
Well, go ahead, Kenny, please.
No, I really enjoy that analogy because that's similar to what we tell our customers when we have to explain. I mean, like you said, the frontier of Niagara is pretty well established. Now we're getting into the competitive, situation where people have sole source. They've been used to one provider for many, many years, and all of a sudden their systems are getting old, literally old. The legacy components are no longer available. The chips are no longer available. They have to pick their next partner and future-proof their community. Their distributed environments, their buildings. 63-story buildings. They can't make a single source choice anymore because of the ramifications. So when we tell the story of it, we often say what Windows is to Microsoft, Niagara is to Tritium, because Tritium is the home body, but the product that they make, the Niagara product, is what has changed and revolutionized our industry by taking these protocols, normalizing them, and then putting them back into the network as a universal point so that other systems can communicate, and you can integrate all your subsystems. You can take a lawn system, a backnet system, a train system, and whatever, and make it all talk out of a central PC or central.
Well, they can, Kenny, and it seems to me, because I think Niagara and Tritium is truly open. Okay. And I think this is another distinction. I think as time has sort of evolved, and it's a question, it's not a statement. It seems like to me, if you're an owner, one of the questions, whatever brand of Niagara you're getting, you kind of have to ask, because it seems like manufacturers are putting their own twist on it. So they kind of get locked down again, just at a different level. Are you guys finding that, or is that a question as an owner you want to ask?
I think as owners, and that's why it's so good that you see that airport facilities manager there learning all that he can from every side. They've got to be vigilantes for openness.
Sure. But to your point, Eric, the tools that people have, like if you talk from this manufacturer, in order to maximize the unitary controls and our plant controllers and get them commissioned and running as quickly as possible, they have a tool that aids in the expedient commissioning or programming of that. So you're always going to have levels within levels, but the problem is like with the Jace and the NIC statement. So when you have an open NIC statement, that means that any of the OEM people, so that this contractor who wears a red flag can go into an entity that has a green flag. And as long as it's Niagara and as long as it's the open NIC statement, they can begin to use the Workbench tools and access that system.
Right.
So
But that's where you got to have a guy like Donnie Walker from Newcomb and Boyd or somebody that's looking after your best interest. Because as long as you have that NIC statement, you're completely open. And then the tools can differentiate. But I guess the question for you guys would be, now you're a manufacturer. I want to put you in, Kenny, you manufacture brand A, Therese, you manufacture brand B. And now you got this open stuff, because again, in the past, in the not too distant past, and some people still play this game, the game was make ours different so we can lock people in. So we're going to assume that as people get more and more educated, that's no longer going to be a possibility. They're just not going to play if you don't have that open NIC statement. So, Therese, you've seen this from Revolutions in Silicon Valley. Kenny, you've seen it. If you're a manufacturer, how do you differentiate yourself now, given that everything is open?
I think there's service. You differentiate on whole product of adding. There is the Niagara. It's getting better. Hardware certainly isn't the issue. It's your service provider, your partner in putting this in, whether that be, and it's coming at different levels. It might be, as we call him, the enlightened engineer, the Donnie from Newcomb and Boyd, or I work with Altura Associates.
Matt Schwartz. Yeah.
Matt Schwartz. And their whole company is Haystack. If you've read the article that I wrote, actually, Jim Meacham wrote, but I helped with the interview of that. If you read what Jim Meacham of Altura said, their whole company is very Haystack aware, very understands the power that an open Niagara platform brings to both. And they used to talk about having two sides of their business: asset management. So every asset in the building, every AHU, et cetera, for the life cycle of that unit. You need a lot of information coming from an open system for that sort of business, and then the commissioning side of the business. So those people, energy managers, asset managers, controls contractors, master system integrators, as Scott Cochran is always talking about, all of them, it's coming from, they might have different titles, but that member of your team that really understands the controls environment and can think out into the future, you really need that on your team. So and that's what's going to differentiate is who has relationships with those people and provides them with the best wands. I love the wand thing.
Yeah, well, and the wand, just so our audience knows, the wand is basically a conductor's wand. That's what
it went from the guitar as one wand that we were talking about. Now we're shifting a little bit to the.
Well, we're going to get that on the day one. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but to the concept of a manufacturer, what you're going to do now is the one cool thing about the Niagara Summit 2018 is we saw it. We saw some manufacturers that once upon a time had a story where they didn't espouse open systems, and they did do their darndest to make something that was very good so it could compete. And we still have several manufacturers out there. You got Delta, you've got ALC, you've got Reliable, you've got Allerton, and they don't play friendly. They're not in a Niagara environment. You put them in, that's your baby, and you better so you get a one choice, one contractor, you might have two in the area, and they might be great, and you might love them. And see, some people do. See, I think it's a very important thing. Is some people. The more critical the application, like data centers or whatever, they don't want multiple people. They want one guy, and they want to hang them. They want one throat to choke, and they get really good. So somebody like ALC was just magnificent in the hospital realm, and they dominated a lot of the medical facilities because they were so good at it, and they had such a complementary. Everybody was in it. They share all that information. If you made a boo-boo with these guys, it's spread across the country with an email. So the bottom line is that there's different choices. Some people, regardless of all the openness out there, are still going to pick the guy because they want to have somebody like a Siemens that's got deep pocket, $90 billion, not going to go anywhere, not going to change, not going to get bought out. And if they invest in the critical environments and all this stuff, they want to make sure this manufacturer entity does not change. They want it to stay the same, and they're willing to pay that expense. And I've had that I've had that discussion with a lot of people and walked out of it saying, okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, for you, that makes sense, but for a lot of other people, it doesn't.
I think the big campus owners want to run a fair RFP. They don't want to say, for the next 20 years, we only have
Well, that was part A of my point.
in our region 2 possible service providers.
Well, we saw, Therese, at I think the KMC commander meeting was really the first time I heard it spelled out so well about the way our world's becoming. It's going to be 95% services, 5% hardware. Everybody's hardware is good and just incredible. I think EasyIO putting the four core processor in a single unit, the FS32, a server controller, kind of sets the new benchmark, because pretty soon everybody's gonna have to work to that level. So that when you get one single controller, a massive like computer on steroids with multiple ports for multiple communications and also wireless, all web enabled and secure, so it's got the latest and greatest stuff. What are you going to have left when everybody has one of them? You're going to have services, and you're going to have stories like we just talked. Eric and I, our favorite thing is like, who tells the best story prevails. Who has the most compelling and a continuous marketing message is going to walk away with the majority of people's business, because everybody's got the badass controller.
Well, let's real quick, and we'll probably get into this more, but so we're kind of giving you a little smidge of what it was like standing at the bar, some of the conversations that were going on at first night, because this was kind of the stuff that was happening. This is all happening before the conference starts. And of course, then, one of the conversations is going is the evolution of the IP controller. Sure. And let's talk about that, because you mentioned EasyIO. They've got a controller that either can be BACnet, Modbus, or IP. So, guys, what are you seeing with IP? Why is that relevant, and how do you see that changing within Niagara? I mean, Niagara obviously doesn't care one way or another what kind of control you put there, but I think for our industry, as we're talking about differentiating ourselves, I think that's got to be part of the conversation.
Well, a lot of people believe that the IP is a easier, cleaner, more reliable installation. And once you get IP, and everything's connected, then all of a sudden you get power over the Ethernet. So you might be changing the way things are powered. We saw some really heads-up stuff or heady stuff where Johnson Controls is making these car-sized batteries that go in the bottom of the mechanical room now, and everything in the whole building is being powered by 24 volts DC. And even all this sustainable energy things.
You remember we hypothesized that they would start doing that because they got the battery technology. We also hypothesized that eventually they would hook it up to solar panels on the roof. So now they're off the grid.
So I think that's going to be an end game type thing. So you have to have that communication capability, and and then the with the CCTVs and all the lighting, everything's already demonstrated it can be done. So it's just the building automation people got to fall in line and be able to work on that network, scheme.
Yeah, but here's a question for you guys, because I think the big threat to businesses, we know it, one of them is the lighting people, because now if you hook everything with IP, are you in jeopardy of then the lighting people control everything, and so you don't even have our busing where everything's up in the lights?
For sure. I mean, and George Thomas from Contemporary Controls just came back from that KNX lighting show in Frankfurt, where there were 270,000 people. So just to give you an idea of market size, and we have our ASHRAE with 70,000, set a new record in Chicago. And then we find out that there's a lighting show in Frankfurt that had 200-some thousand. So George said he walked around, and he was Ken St. Clair's feet on the street there. The first thing he does is he admit that he couldn't possibly walk the whole fair because it was just too big.
Yeah.
He didn't have to have a golf cart to get from point A to point B. But he said that some of the things that really struck him was Delta released one of those sensors, exactly what we're talking about. It's up in the lighting, and it had all the sensors: temperature, humidity, pressure, occupancy, all there. So you put it up, and it's in the zone. It's in the office. It's in the whatever, and you don't need the wall sensors and whatever. Now there'll be people that will tell you that it's not going to be as accurate or whatever. But it's just the truth.
Whoever's got the best message, right?
There we go. But It's already been there. It's already deployed and was at a show. It's ready for purchase. And we know that Acuity's got some stuff that's in the same department, and Siemens has got their total room automation with their lighting concept, where it's already in the controller. Whether you use it or not, it can be enabled at a later time, but it's in the controller. They're not giving you a choice. Their DXR controllers already have the the bus for the lighting is already internal.
Yeah. Well, listen, Therese, I'd like to get your opinion, because, do you think it's possible that maybe JCI has got the end run of all end runs, where they're putting the battery in the basement? I mean, could you see that happening?
following your discussion, I think that there is a couple of firewalls, if you will. One is, well, we've seen in big campuses that they will have somebody on site that really understands, because even before lighting, it's the camera stuff, it's the physical security, the CCTV cameras that went on to the IP network. We see that internally already. You could have an internal team that could handle that. It's not that complicated. You didn't need a special integrator for your CCTV cameras that you could buy at Best Buy. You know, that it wasn't, and lighting too, it's simple enough, but you really didn't see a lot of corporations having their own controls contract. You always needed, it's much more complicated, and you always needed an outside controls expert to come in. So it was not easy for an enterprise to just swallow up and manage all by themselves.
I'm wondering if Johnson's going to buy a lighting company.
Well, and be like, and we were definitely watching Acuity by Distech,
which is a hell of a damn. I mean, think about it, that's a hell of a merger there. You get those because Therese, as we do, 300, and where 300 making your tenants more comfortable and productive and healthier is kind of where the big cheese, as we talk about it ad nauseum on the show, but I think Distech and Acuity, that sort of, I mean, you talk to Distech about the control strategies they're using with changing the color of the light and everything, the circadian rhythms. It's a different approach, and they get their messaging right. I think they could influence how it's all done. How it's done,
and then I think there's another firewall, but you explain it to me. The idea of reaching down and having any impact on the DDC code, having any impact on the sequence of operations. Certainly when I heard Jim Bland explain bulk deploy of Tritium, I got it. They're actually, when they want to do a universal change to a set point, they're going to be able to do that.
Bulk deploy, yeah.
Yeah, bulk deploy. The lighting companies, whether they'll ever really get to the point where they understand how to reach down, and I'm not an expert in this, but I don't see them getting there.
Well, no, I know maybe not them per se, but I could sort of see them all of a sudden, guys like Ted Halp and Ted from Hepta Systems and all the systems integrators. Now they're the customers of distributors like us and the customers of the major manufacturers. I could see them now all of a sudden becoming customers of the lighting companies. I mean, so, they bundle it differently. And now, because at the end of the day, they're going to put in what the customer wants. It's whether you use this widget or this widget, this method or this method. So I could see that maybe changing. But I'll tell you what, we're look at Kenny and say, Kenny, we're digressing a little bit. Let's get back on track.
Well, it's fun. I was going to start with the word Walmart, and the big customers are going to drive that kind of technology. In other words, there's a Walmart standard now. It's all because of LED lighting. But let's hold that. Let's slide. I think Therese gave us the cue when she mentioned Jim Bland's name, because then that'll get us back on track on day one.
Because we got to get out of the bar and go to the session now. All right.
Well, listen, the second Tritium Summit post, the Niagara Summit 2018 post, was CEO and President Jim Bland reignites the spirit of Tritium. Day one at Niagara Summit, and we were all attendees in that the seat that we were at, and what we saw on the screens. This big 3-screen presentation. I'll tell you, it was pretty cool. I love the way that the Niagara, the conductor, his hand turns blue, and then he strikes his magical wand into the boom, and it all just went blue, and it went into every building, went up every floor, came out, to like a wireless thing into the next building. And so we watched this dazzling, electronic presentation, the imagery of the Niagara blue spread of connected data through a city landscape, and it was awesome. I love the show part of it. It just gets you right, tunes in, and then Jim delivered a great. They brought it back, so he figuratively said to everybody out there, here's your wand, like Teresa said, here's your Niagara wand, go out there and bring the world under connected control, smart connected control. So it was a nice transition. I thought it was kind of, it's what we needed at the time, because everybody was expecting, you got to get the show off And then it went into the technical stuff. So I thought it was a great start.
To me, it was kind of cool. You know, you're absolutely right about the conductor. I think one of the key takeaways I got from Jim Bland is that Niagara is more than just a piece of hardware. It's more than just a piece of software. It really is a tool that you can create with. I mean, what popped into my head was we're all sort of in the caves, and we're sort of drawn on the caves with a piece of chalk or whatever. And I think what Jim inspired in me is the fact that no, you got a whole set of paints and a whole set of canvas, and you can create anything you want to on this canvas. I think he gave us some great analogies, which I'll ask Therese about in a second, about how that, you know, if we think differently, I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface of what can be done with this marvelous platform and this marvelous tool. So that was sort of the overarching theme I got. Think differently, and you got this tool, and what we can create, we haven't even thought of yet. What about you, Therese? What did you think?
Exactly. I think that's a good analogy. Another wand, the paintbrush as wand, was all the innovation that that Tritium has built in the last year, because these happen every year. So we had cloud that we talked about. We had their Edge 10 that we talked about. We had, at the end, he brought up blockchain. I liked that he was very, put up on the screen the actual engineers that were in charge of each of those projects. Another one on the list is bulk deploy that I've already mentioned, is how to make it easier for their facilities managers and customers of their customers.
Yeah, look, Kenny, real quick, and Therese, I want to cycle back around, but Kenny, talk about the bulk deploy, because Kenny's had customers that have this solves a problem for them. Why is that significant? And tell them a little bit about exactly what that is and why you think it's significant.
Well, bulk deploy is actually kind of new. In other words, there's three things that they like we talked about. They're really excited about the. First of all, I would say to Jim is what he did was too. Is he brought up that Disney example about thinking outside the box, which is really cool, because I've read it and forgot it. But how do you connect 9 dots using 4 lines? And in order to do that, you got to go outside the box literally and come back in from another direction. And then so that was cool. Then there's the idea that you can fail figuratively, fail positively, fail, but failure means you're moving forward. So the old where Treeks comes from, those guys always said fail first, fail forward, and fail often. But to make mistakes. So Jim said he goes around the Tritium facility and he lets people know that he wants to get things done. He wants to get it done fast, and he wants them to take out of the box approaches to get things done quicker. So the whole idea was that Tritium is trying to take this almost a Silicon Valley approach towards the development of new Niagara opportunities. And the 3 ones that they featured were the release in N4.6, which is going to have just a huge leap forward of technical innovation. Edge 10.0, which is a new controller with 10 points. So they're going to make Niagara products, so they primarily work software, but this is going to be a controller that's going to be very low cost to give people an opportunity to take ported Niagara on a controller and basically make the same stack, the same abilities to do different things and really take advantage of technology are going to be in the smallest deliverance of their product. 10 points.
Push it out to the edge.
And then the bulk deploy. No, bulk deploy. Jim said that they're actually looking for. He said any of you geniuses out there that got a great name for us, he wouldn't mind relabeling the bulk deploy. But basically, it's when you do one thing, and like Kevin Smith tells us, it goes out. So you're a chain store, you're a Medical Express, or you're a CVS, or you're somebody, and you've got all these 1,000 locations, and instead of going through and doing them, the onesies and twosies or local, you do one single change, and it deploys it network wide. Every single controller that's in the Niagara network receives that change. So it's extraordinary. You can do something in 10 minutes. It would normally have taken hours or maybe in a day or two. Cool. So that's the leap forwards we're seeing, is that as Niagara people inside the engineers and whatever they're allowed to go off leash and make try to do things that they would not normally do in a conservative environment where you can't, these are the rules and you got to get this done by Tuesday. This deliverable has to be done. These are the rules. Well, that kind of compression, that kind of cramps people's creative spirits. So now he's talking about letting people, go think outside the box and bring me something radical, new, and help us get this thing deployed quicker, better, faster.
Right. I want to cycle back around, Kenny, with that. But Therese, I want to get your input on this too, because you come from a Silicon Valley background. I think the motto in Silicon Valley is fail often, fail forward. And I think Kenny sort of set it up that in our industry it's a fail and you're gone. And so to me, the brilliance of what Jim has done is he seems like he's creating a culture and an environment where creativity can really happen. And Therese, you've been in different environments like that. I mean, spot on with what Jim's saying, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that he's, first of all, throwing those new gauntlets out, like he threw out the blockchain, get people thinking about the future, and get more of the knowledge of what Tritium's already done and why that's so innovative. Why that's so innovative into people's hearts and minds.
Yeah, well, and listen, for our community might not know, Therese. Let's give them some stable datum on what blockchain is, because he's talking about using blockchain in maybe a little bit different way. But I think it's important, and I couldn't explain it, but and if you can, I understand. Kenny sure can. But what do you think blockchain is, and why do you think it might be relevant?
Well. Before I do that, I'm going to say that one thing that was really fun for me is, the New Deal thing is happening on the other, always online, socially. And New Deal just put up this beautiful article on blockchain from an expert, and he's got a long list of how blockchain is going to be used in leasing, in demand response sort of situations. I'd probably call it up and start listing rather than babble, but really explains it so much better than anything I could babble here. All the ways blockchain will likely impact our industry. And I think that tying those things, that's the beauty of social media, is that I took and it was almost like when Jim Bland was talking about it on the stage, Anto was posting this thing on the New Deal, and I was able to put those two things together through my tweet. The picture, here's what Jim Bland said. When you've got, I loved your, that you captured on your site, the 750,000.
I'm sorry, you had that backwards. Nearly 700,000 instances of Jace's, or Niagara instances, connecting 75 million devices. So that's really cool.
Right. And so if you've blockchain enabled 75 million devices that can now also be transactive, meaning they could, it's going to be very powerful.
Well, it is, because I think at the end of the day,
if you want to know all the reasons why, go to newdeal.blog. Okay,
well, we'll do that. We'll actually go to buildingcontext.me too and check Therese's blog out. But if you think about it, at the end of the day, it's really gets down to efficiencies, right? I mean, that's another way you differentiate yourself, is efficiencies, and the fact that Jim even put blockchain in people's awareness. Because now, essentially, what blockchain allows you to do is transfer money, transfer funds, transfer information at an extremely rapid and efficient rate.
Machine to machine, no people in between.
Yeah. Well, that's the key. You got it, Therese. Machine to machine, no people.
You guys remember who brought that to our attention first? Was Jim Young out of Realcomm down there.
Right.
Where was that? San Jose, right?
San Jose.
And but I mean, to get technical here, the blockchain was invented by Satoshi Nakamoto in 2008 for the use in cryptocurrency Bitcoin.
Well, hang on real quick, Therese. I got to ask you a question. Do you think Kenny's pronounced his name right?
As close as I get it.
This is, we have fun because Kenny's the great at pronouncing it. There's not in a million years could I ever get that gentleman's name right, or lady.
I wouldn't have even tried.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is, like Therese is saying, the invention of blockchain for Bitcoin made it the first digital currency to solve the double spending problem. So without the need of a trusted authority or central server. So that's another thing about blockchain, is that a lot of people think it's going to take over the internet, because you're not going to need to have the organizing thing like Facebook or Amazon. Blockchain by itself eliminates a lot of the duplicities and the need to come back to a server
So
because it's everywhere.
Short PayPal.
Well,
PayPal out of business, right?
you got to get me on that short PayPal. We can go offline now. I want you to tell me exactly what you meant by that, because
I mean, meaning that PayPal as a company might be in jeopardy if this takes off, because that's what PayPal does, is secure transactions.
Sure. But the thing that was really cool was I thought Tritium took a leg up on innovation. Fail is okay as long as you're going in the right direction. And that the comment that I think I went away with was that the possibility of failure should no longer restrain the efforts to achieve spectacular possibilities and payoffs of the Niagara innovation. So I thought that means that all those guys sitting out in this, the people that are taking Niagara seriously have a wand handed to them that they could create their own future and their own destiny, to create a new business model. And see, we live in a world of disruption. Some of the pains that we feel is that we've lost some of the things that we did well for so long that were revenue generators, and they're gone now because they've been taken over by fulfillment centers or whatever. This opportunity means if you're smart enough to create an app and you use it in the environment that Niagara has with their ecosystem and even their marketplace 2.0 now, you can make yourself a whole different set of business model schemes that can generate revenue and really take you in a place you didn't expect to go. But if you have it, this framework will allow you, it enables you to create a new future. Magical.
Okay, buddy, I think I got the name for bulk deploy. I was thinking about the wand and creating. Therese, what do you think about Merlin?
Merlin, just give it a name like that. Yeah.
I like that.
It's
Project Merlin.
Project Merlin. We could give it a project, but could have that word just distributed. I don't know.
First there was Apple, now there's Merlin.
Merlin, if people could understand what Merlin is, but I think that it's very literal, bulk deploy now. But it's very important, this idea of changing the code, the DDC code. And that's where I'm back to the whole discussion about lighting, which I think is going to happen. But I don't think while I see it absorbing the cameras and the lights, I think it baffles Silicon Valley every single time, is how to really understand what DDC code is all about. And that's what Tritium and Brian Frank before that really understood.
Well, we heard some very interesting news. The networking that goes on there too, because one of our favorite players, and Therese, I have not read this yet, and I really haven't pursued it. But we heard that Comfy had experienced loss. That the great ideas and the venture capital that get them started and help to educate our entire industry on this new way to layer over top of a building automation or building management system to integrate this here phone or smart device with the building management system. It didn't survive its opportunity. They gave them, I guess, a fair breadth of opportunity. Didn't accept it. It wasn't accepted at the accelerated rate that they need to have to sustain them with the Silicon folks, the pay daddies, And so it's a shame, but that's nothing about innovation and failing. I mean, what their failure was everybody else's benefit. They educated our whole industry on this new way to integrate, the personal, to your contextualization. I love it, Therese. Every time I think of this, I think of contextualization. Remember that the glass snowball with going into the shopping center, and having a relationship between your phone and the whatever was going on in the store, whatever technologies could give you, tell you what's on sale and where to, I love that whole thing, but because that's now coming into our industry. Our industry is becoming contextualized by data through these innovative ideas.
And listen, before Therese responds to that, I got really bad news for you, Kenny.
What?
One of your favorite people of mine, Lindsay Baker, is no longer at Comfy. So for all our listeners out there, if you're looking for just a dynamic, incredible individual, I think Lindsay Baker is it. And Therese, you're friends with Lindsay. So but she was telling me that Lindsay, before she gets back in the job market, is going to watch the entire series of The Wire. She's never seen it. So you've seen that, right, Kenny?
Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, it's interesting stuff. And then of course we can cycle back around too, because one of the big announcements that was made first day was Niagara's full endorsement and inclusion of Project Haystack. And Therese, that's near and dear to your heart. Let's give our community a little stable data. So tell them what Project Haystack is, why it's important, and your reaction to the fact that Niagara has embraced that full on.
Well, Niagara's been a member of Project Haystack, but Project Haystack is an open source organization that is working together with our industry to come up with first, it's because it's really two separate things. First, common names. Just so people have a dictionary. We realize, as I listened to your talk with Ken last week, everything needs to be tagged. And that's a huge job. So with Project Haystack, you have the best brains in the industry have come together and said different dictionaries for how to name things, how the air handler attached to all the VAV systems attaches to zones in the building, how to articulate that in naming. So you get standard naming conventions that will be standard across the industry. And then tagging all that, which is even actually a metadata tags, as once you have a data object, being able to assign it a model number, version number, color if you need parts, whatever. It's really, it's all based on HTML and what Tim Berners-Lee came up with when he invented the World Wide Web. Metadata tagging is just a really powerful concept, and it's bringing it into our industry in a standardized way. And the big announcement this year, end of February, was that BachNet, which had an internal tagging effort going, and Brick Schema, which was really led by a lot of data science intelligence, both from the UC, University of California system, UC San Diego, Berkeley, and as well as IBM Ireland, who were they weren't coming from our industry, but they were coming at this as data scientists. And there's this word ontology that is, we're going to have to learn that word too. But when I think about ontology, I almost think about words and Dewey Decimal System, but a real system of words come up by that a linguist would understand for describing different methods, different technologies and industries. And so they came up from this with a data scientist ontology. And it was actually value added. It's all marrying together now under an ASHRAE banner, ASHRAE 223. And that is so significant. And again, I can understand why people like John Petsy and Brian Frank, who started Project Haystack, would be so proud of this, because unlike the IoT world at large, which has this proliferation of standards and obvious industry battles, one by Qualcomm, and another one, Intel starts this, Google starts Thread. There's so many protocols. It just it stymies the industry. They don't know how to move forward. Our industry now, our people know how to move forward. They're not looking because the quote that Kenny gave earlier about it's going to be services. It's going to be 5% of hardware and software and 95% of services. How do you run not only your buildings better, but your businesses better, because you have control over your buildings and you're moving towards an intelligent building. All the value that's going to be generated by that is going to be 95% in the service revenue. So all those companies that tend to be my clients, they've got a nice paved path forward, and the bet that they've already made on Project Haystack is valid. And so it's just such good news. And then to have Tritium, Kevin Smith, bring that up as his second bullet point, how important tagging is, and this, how much Niagara full-throated endorses that and is going to build on that is really important to the industry.
Well, Therese, listen, Couldn't agree more, and kudos to you. Okay, because there are a lot of people that were sort of involved in getting Niagara to the mainstream, but you to me sort of have taken their messaging through your blogs at buildingcontext.me. You also created a Haystack magazine. So why don't we tell for our listeners out there who might want to get a subscription to that? How do they do? How do they get involved? Definitely go to buildingcontext.me, but how do they get involved?
They get the magazine. Well, the magazine is right on the Project Haystack site. So it's www.project, and then there's a -haystack.org.
And then the code is
That's a really good place to go to see just all the working groups since the last Haystack Connections meeting. Like 8, 9, 10, 12 different working groups have been launched, like a working group marrying our, let's still call it Project Haystack, but our dictionaries for Project Haystack and this wider movement with BIM.
Our ontology, Therese.
Our ontology.
Our new ontology.
With BIM, which, building information modeling, the architecture world really that's been their lingo franco. Okay. And we're working groups for data centers, working groups for certainly
I think another startup with Sandstar too coming up for
working group for Sandstar, which is very exciting.
But I think we're just getting started, Kenny, and I want to kick back to you, and I want to get on to day 2. But real quick, could it be that Haystack is becoming an aquifer for ways that we process information?
Well, Teresa, Eric's teasing me. He's ribbing me because I came up with this analogy last week.
Niagara aquifer, water.
And the reason why is because to me it's like a water table, and to me, what the thing is, everybody can access the same source of innovation and technology, but people have different needs. So some people have a little well because if they're sustaining a little farm plan or whatever, so they can hit the aquifer, take care of their needs. But then you have major aquifers, major access to aquifers where you're supplying a city or whatever, and it's crazy. But everybody's dealing with water, and the water comes up through the aquifer. There's different aquifers, and so Niagara reminded me. I just had this vision where I saw this technology was just available, and people were going to access it at deep points and shallow areas, or just tiny little service plants, because it's still the same technology. It's just at your scale, whatever you need. So I thought that was a very appropriate. And
no, you stick with aquifer. I'm going to come up with a different one for Haystack, which is going to be a perpetual thunderstorm.
A perpetual thunderstorm.
Okay.
Well. So go to that site and look at all the working groups. Look at what they're talking about on the forum. And under downloads, there's the 4 issues so far of the Project Haystack magazine. I'm now working on the 5th issue, and it is coming together really nicely after that February announcement. People that are really using it want to talk about what got a story from the GSA.
Well, congratulations. I think you guys missed the opportunity to plug it too, that the Connections, they just closed off their advertisement issue. They actually extended the people now. So Haystack's getting a lot of headwind because they're getting a lot of people involved, but you're also seeing, when you start to see people get involved to the point where they become active members and they sponsor things and they advertise, that's when you really start to see the traction. And to your point, and to your credit, the Project Haystack Connections is a very fun looking document. I mean, I remember the first time I saw it. I mean, sometimes when you read stuff, especially on the internet, it can get tiring, to your eyes, and it's hard to see. But when you populate the screen or the image with a lot of exciting interactive stuff and a lot of movement, so if you click this, you go here, so well done. I think we saw something incredible, like you said, when Kevin Smith came out and did that. To me, that was like an ocean-going yacht that had kind of slack sails, and this thing was a gust of positive, directional wind to push it forward in a way that we haven't seen somebody get behind something in a while.
And Kevin Smith wrote a book. He's written 7 books. He's a very interesting guy.
Right.
And he wrote 7 books. And one of them was web semantics.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was something to have him say that from the stage.
So
and the sessions, when you get into the sessions, was 2 sessions that John Petsy was up, and they were animated. There was a lot of questions. New audience. So you just could feel new people coming into Haystack.
Well, Therese, hang on real quick. I just quick sort of thought from both you guys, because you think a lot of people, when Nino De Cosmo, the president, moved on, and when John Sublett moved on, I think a lot of people were kind of going, "Wow, what's Tritium going to do?" But both your guys take. I think with Jim Brand, they brought in a different type of leader. I think he's absolutely brilliant. And then Kevin Smith. I mean, John Sublett was off the chain, but Kevin Smith, they didn't step backwards, did they?
No, in fact, I listened to your video with him. He was a friend of John Sublett's.
That's right.
They did not step backwards. And I feel like that was funny with the guitarist, too. He was also a comedian, the way he brought up Nemo and the Disney movie. And John Sublett, where is he? But, we might see him again. But I think, the innovation that's going on, I think just there's so much else going on in the industry. And it is important how the channel is innovating, too. The Alpers and the Sky Foundries and the Link Springs and Control Co. and Cochrane Supply now is doing product, right? They're innovating. And I think
a Raven innovation.
Yeah, Raven. So it's like maybe you would say 2016, 2017. I don't even know how long to put the period that it was happening. Is that you weren't really seeing there. Everybody was innovating, and that part of the channel was being very, very innovative. And maybe that these things that Tritium has been doing was not given as much play. And I think this is like to hear them going bam, bam, bam. This is what we're doing right now.
Well, no, Therese, I think I would encourage our community, given the metaphors we're using, to no longer think of themselves as contractors or integrators, but think of themselves as artists. So what's the next master systems artist going to look like? And I think we're seeing that with the examples you gave. And I think those guys are always out in front. So they're harbingers of things to come. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. So, Kenny, let's get back to Kevin Smith, because we haven't even gotten through day 1 yet. We've been talking.
Yeah, we already leaked into day 2. We didn't proclaim it, but we were already accessing the post for day 2. And to your point, Eric, about the masters, we actually have so many interviews. So to the Control Trends community, please continue to watch, because as we get Eric gets his editing, to schedule going, we have fabulous interviews with like Brian Frank. I can't wait to see that one, how that comes out, because you talk about excitement. When he smiled when we said Project Haystack, what did it mean to you? He just smiled. He went ear to ear smile, and because to him it was like something that he knew was coming. It was just a matter of time. It might be like two Titanic wrestlers, and one finally gets the one down on the mat. Not that Kevin Smith was like that, but the concept, it had a lot of pushback. There were a lot of people, I think, that somehow they didn't like the idea, that they didn't come up with the idea, or the manufacturers didn't like the idea that it was something that they weren't going to be driven by the by the users and by the community to do something they didn't want to do. And here they probably have no other choice now. Once Niagara adopts it, all the other OEMs are probably going to have to take a really good stab at that and put it in their specs and really start.
I think it's the first products that's been crowdsourced. What is that the term would you use when the crowd puts it together?
Well, I mean, you can interpret it that way, but to me that means something a little bit different. Crowdsources is when you come up with an idea and people contribute. Like when we found that, what was the example where they tried to do the gold mine and how to get to the gold, access it. He puts it out on the.
Well, I think of it as people invest money in an idea that they like, but now they just invest.
Right. Or information.
Settle this debate for us, Therese. Is Project Haystack a crowdsource?
Sure.
It's open source. Why can't it just be open source?
Because we always because the first rule is you have to change the words if you wanted to make it original.
Well, listen, let's slide into day 2 here, because
crowdsource usually means funding, and Project Haystack is free. Join it, use it. It's not, you got to create value. I think John Petsy said that at AHR is there's no value in it. You can't own it. But you create value with it.
Sure can.
And so certainly his company's created a lot of value with it. And I've got all the right people whispering in my ear with this Project Haystack magazine. And I'm only talking to people that really get it and are just like moving forward with the big clients, big portfolios. This is how you're going to be able to manage them. And you can't manage them without having tagging.
Cool.
Agreed. All right. Well, just day two, just to go back to it. So we had Kevin Smith's Tritium CTO reviews day two at Niagara Summit. Kevin is an amazingly fun, intelligent, just underspoken guy. He's carried some big projects through. He worked for some of the three-letter agencies, probably, that we don't really need to go into. But he has a background, like Therese said, author of 7 books, and just really deeply immersed into it. He came on as an invitation from John Sublett as the interview. If you can get a chance to watch it, it kind of really, Kevin, he hit I used the analogy there by touching all the bases, all the new Niagara bases, because there was some very important technologies that he wanted to talk about. He hit them all, and then just the concept of an ecosystem. I think we could revisit that real quick, because to me, Niagara, you're only as good as how many people really and truly believe in it and they invest in it and commit to it. And what I saw at this second day was a true, in the vendor area especially, many companies are investing very, very much money into the future. Their future is enmeshed in with the Niagara framework. So I mean, when you see that kind of commitment on a global basis, we had Australia there, we had Germany there, Systemac that was bought out by another company. We had different parts of Europe. We had South Africa. So when I got to see these guys and talk about it, we had people from Japan there, I believe, in the vendor show that were actually coming into the North American market with their Niagara product, or modified by Niagara. So it was a very exciting thing to see, because to me, that energy, that economic energy, means that's kind of where, if you're going to go with the future, that's the place to be in. So I was very excited about day two.
So guys, guess how long we've been talking? About an hour and a half.
Oh my gosh!
And I think I think we could go on all day. It's just so exciting. So I think we've got to decide. I think we got to wind this down in the next 5 minutes or so. So I'll start with you, Therese. If you could just give somebody one takeaway from the summit, what would it be?
One takeaway from the summit is, watch the innovation that's coming out of this community. Watch out, Silicon Valley. As you say, the start and stop of all the energy that Silicon Valley's tried to move companies in here, and they seem like they're here and they're gone. But this just keeps building. So Dell and Intel, it was great to see Dell and Intel there. And
tell us about the young lady you introduced me to it.
We're going to have her on, I hope.
She was not Rick Lisa, but we are going to have her on.
Janine Davison.
Janine Davison.
Shout out to Janine Davison. We can't wait to get you on the show. So Therese, I think when it comes to smart building controls, the message we want to send to anybody who's listening regarding which channel they should go with, our channel, lighting, or Silicon Valley, is our channel is the real deal.
The real deal.
There you go. All right, Kenny. I mean, we could talk about, and we will probably next show talk about the breakout sessions, which were incredible. But Kenny, your key takeaway from the Niagara Summit.
Well, again, I thought it was refreshing to see that the spirit that brought Niagara to bear in the beginning has been re-energized, revisited. I think that the Niagara framework and team are strong, getting stronger, and committed under the new leadership. So it's not the same leadership. I'm very surprised you didn't bring up about the tent and the beer thing. But so I'll give you a chance for your closing. But the Niagara community and ecosystem are growing worldwide and leading the way with innovation. And data is the currency that, if we can learn how to make it part of our world, we're going to all be very successful with it, because some part of that needs serviced. And it's not about hardware as much as it is service and data. So.
Good stuff, Kenny. And the tent and the beer is a creative concept that Jim Brand introduced us to, which we are not going to discuss on this show. If Jim does come on the show, we will let Jim introduce that concept. But Kenny and I are studying Ginas. And let me just tell you a couple things. Tents, beer, and coffee. Those are the 3 ingredients that make great innovation.
Cycle, not all together, but you cycle those things through.
Well, or if you're super creative, you do them all three together. Before we end this show, we're all headed to the next big event, which is coming up, which is IBCon Realcomm. And, I'll start with you, Therese. Why should people be at IBCon Realcomm?
IBCon Realcomm is where the world of facilities management and real estate, the property decision makers meet with the integrated and intelligent building community. And it has been for the last 20 years. And it's going to be the 20th year, so I think it's going to be super special in Las Vegas, which makes it even more special. I'm excited about the first day they have the system, they call it Smart Building Integrator Summit, which Leroy and Scott Cochran, Leroy of, formerly of,
McKinney's, yeah.
Formerly of McKinney's, now he's at own High Rose, right? And Scott Cochran are planning, and I was talking to a lot of people who are getting involved. Jason, our favorite young gun from Hepta System, Jason Hawk, he's going to be there. He's going to be real involved in that Smart Building Integrator Summit. So just for that, I think it's a great place to be. But when you add all the people that show up, the conference floor there is always great. And
buildingcontext.me will be there, and so will Control Trends. So
and buildingcontext.me will be there, and so will Control Trends.
I kind of look at it, these aristocrats back in, the 30s or 40s or whatever, there was always this season where they would go to different things, like, we go to Madrid, then we go to Nice or whatever. So, I think the really cool kids in our industry, they go to the Niagara Summit and they go to Realcomm IBCon. It's just, that's what we do, right? So, Kenny, what about you, baby? What are some reasons you would give our community to go?
Well, using the analogies, what the Tritium Summit was to the Niagara community and Niagara framework and integrators, Realcomm IBCon is to the people that represent the user group first. In other words, and in terms of combing through all the technologies, the relevant technologies, and getting the cliff notes on a 1 or 2 day visit, I don't think there's any meeting that you can go to professionally that does it so well. I mean, you can go there from 8 o'clock to 8 o'clock, 2 or 3 days, and even take advantage of some of the other things they have. And when you come away, you will be motivated to go back to wherever you come from at whatever capacity. You feel energized. You'll feel like what the next steps are going to be at the 30,000 foot level, but the most important steps are the ones wherever you're at, where your feet are hitting the ground. You know that you'll be better educated, better informed, and better able to secure your own futures and the futures of your organization.
I agree, Kenny, and I couldn't say more about that. I think, Therese said on it too, it's one of the few places you can go to get educated, but the customers are there. I will just start by telling a story that, Kenny, you were there when we were at the couple Realcomm IBCons ago. Remember the gentleman that had the suspenders on? He looked like a Wall Street guy, and we got curious about him at one of the breaks. We started talking to him, and he was a real estate owner, and he asked where I was from, Atlanta, and I mentioned a job we had there. He goes, "Oh yeah, I own that building." So this is the kind of connections you can get. And I think the other thing is, if you're going to influence people, this is where they're going to get their information. So it's a must. You got to be there. And so I tell you what, guys, with that, I just want to begin to wind the show down. Kenny, to me, Therese, probably to you too, one of the biggest thrills I get. And I want to thank everybody at Niagara Summit that came up to myself and Kenny and said, "Hey, we watch you guys. We appreciate what you do." That makes it all worthwhile to us, and that's happening more and more. So for the people that tune into Control Trends and Control Talk now, thank you very much. It makes it all worthwhile for us, because this is a labor of love for Kenny and myself. And when you guys come out and girls come up and say, "Hey, we watch you on the show," it makes all the difference in the world. Agree, Kenny?
Sure does. Yeah. And you know what? The cool thing about it is it's growing, and people are contributing. The thing that you told people at that one opportunity was that the more you contribute to Control Trends, the more it gets out to more people. It's like one of these, it's accumulative, but then it goes exponential. We have people from different parts of the world. I think is what really excites me is when you see somebody from can barely understand, the conversation, yet they say they watched the show. So
you remember the guys in China that came up and watched us, and it's illegal for them to use YouTube, so they had to hack in to get it. So
exactly, that was I was referring to. Yeah, that was kind of cool. I mean, that's the real world. You don't know what the internet and the access to the internet. It has no boundaries. It has no rules. So it's kind of cool.
There you go. Now, Therese,
the rules have changed.
Yeah, Therese, I know you've been paying attention, so I know you're going to get this part right, okay? So here we go. We're going to wind it down. So there you go. That's another episode of Control Talk Now, the Smart Buildings videocast and podcast. Special thanks to our guest this week from Therese Sullivan, buildingcontext.me, the queen of Haystack. Be sure to check her out. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, Kenny Smyers. So we appreciate our community. Remember, have a great week. Be bold. Stay in control. Stay relevant, and if you feel like it, just be a little bit disruptive.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed. Kenny Smyers, Therese, I didn't see your thumbs.
Thumbs up.
All right, one more time. All right, here we go. All right, and okay. So I said my part, Kenny. Do your.
Indeed, Eric.